Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you guys for being here. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm sorry guys, I am filming late at night, so my lighting is not anything fancy. It's just the lights in the room. So it's a little bit dark, but we gotta make it work, okay? All right, so today's topic is all about friendship. I think friends are important. We need friends in our lives, right? But here is a very important question, especially if you're already married or you're already with someone. Okay, the question is, can men and women be friends? And my husband and I talked about this, and we're on the same page when it comes to our perspective on this specific topic. So here is my opinion on this topic. I feel like I'm in a rush. All right, so here is my opinion. I think male female friendship can be tricky because almost every time this friendship winds up turning into romance. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case every single time, but that's how it normally starts. You start as friends. It is possible for men and women to be just friends, but the opportunity for romance is often lurking just around the corner. And this happens because there is a difference in how men and women experience opposite sex friendships. According to a study, men are often much more attracted to their female friends than vice versa. And men are also most likely to think that their female friends are attracted to them. Oftentimes, you will find that men have a particularly hard time being just friends. Now, this is my personal observation. I've noticed that when men initiates a friendship to a woman, or women, whatever, normally that man is interested to that woman. Normally, he's doing that because he likes her. Very straightforward, right? But with women, it can get a little bit complicated because there's many different reasons why a woman could be befriending you. That could be one reason, yes. She's initiating a friendship because she likes you. But there are instances where a woman could be befriending a man because she finds him to be comfortable to be around with. If you're giving off that brotherly vibe and she finds you to be harmless, she could be befriending you for that specific reason. On the other hand, it can get tricky because that man could think, oh wow, she's nice to me. She just smiled at me. She's treating me well. She must like me too. So that kind of misunderstanding. Okay, when I say tricky, I also think of three different factors. So the first one is defining the relationship. Are you friends or are you lovers? And for most people, defining that relationship, distinguishing that the difference between the friendly feeling versus romantic feeling is very clear. But sometimes, I should say a lot of times, that can get a little bit blurry. That can get a little bit confusing for some people because there's really no lines or boundaries to begin with. That's why you have this term called friends with benefits. We all know that as friends you shouldn't be doing certain things that only lovers do, but some people cross that line, and that's why some people get confused because there's no more line there. So they're not really sure, are we friends or are we lovers? Now some people, and I've noticed this too, honestly, let's be honest, that some people also choose not to distinguish or choose not to draw the line because they're getting a benefit out of that setup. That's why you have that term, friends with benefits. And this happens because there is that physical or sexual attraction. The reality is almost all males are attracted to their female friends. In a study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, they asked more than 150 professional men and women what they liked and disliked about their cross sex friendships. Topping women's list of dislikes is sexual tension. Now, men, on the other hand, more frequently replied that sexual attraction was the prime reason for initiating a friendship and that it could even deepen a friendship. See that? Throat. Either way, 62% of all subjects reported that sexual tension was present in their cross-sex friendship. That's why this can get tricky. Now let's talk about the females, because looking at this study, it seems like men are pretty much straightforward. When they like you, it shows. They treat you differently, the gestures, that the word is there. But with women, again, with women, it can get confusing because, and I'm saying this coming from a female perspective, and I've noticed this a lot. Sometimes, I should say most of the time, a woman really knows that you are interested because she can see that you're treating her differently. You're nice to her, you're doing a lot of things that obviously only a person who likes another person would do. But she will pretend that she doesn't notice or she doesn't know because she may not be into you. She may not really be attracted to you. She may not like you at all, but she doesn't mind the attraction you're giving her. So that's why it can get very tricky. Now, another factor that I look at when I say this is tricky, this male female friendship can be tricky, is the public perception. Now, if you're a man and a woman and you're spending so much time together and people see that, people will start defining that relationship on your behalf, whether you like it or not. People are going to start asking questions like, why are they always together? When did those two get so close? Are they really just friends? Now, if you're both single and are both looking for the potential partner, that could be a good thing because that could be the start of that exclusiveness stage. But if you're married, that is not a good thing. I personally think that is not a good sight because as a married woman, I think my one of my biggest duties to protect my husband's honor. And when people start to see things like that, even if there's really nothing going on, again, people will start talking. And we're not just talking about, because I know people will say things like, well, you know what, you shouldn't really care what other people are going to say. You know what? You're wrong. This is the situation in your life where you should really care about what people are gonna say because we're not just talking about your reputation. We're talking about your spouse reputation. And again, as a woman, as a wife, I think my duty is to protect my husband's honor. So people start talking and then it is not a good situation because if there's nothing going on, the gossip is still there because whether you like it or not, people will start defining your closeness, that relationship on your behalf. All right, it says here on a study by Psychology Today, most people don't want their spouse to be establishing a new friendship with the opposite sex, especially if that person is very attractive. That's kind of funny, but kidding aside, I think as humans, we have this ability to detect danger because you know that you feel that. Now, even if the other person that your spouse is hanging with is not that attractive, that's still dangerous because biology, okay, it goes back to biology. Man and women together all the time, especially if they're together alone all the time, there's going to be friction there. Now, if that person is attractive, that's even more danger. And whether you want to admit or not, you're going to start to feel a little bit nervous or maybe even threatened. Threatened. I'm going to put that, I can say it properly, threatened. All right. So, according to this study by Psychology Today, 64% of men are more likely to misinterpret the intimacy of friendship for sexual desire. 94% of people say it is possible to fall in love with someone who first entered your life as a friend. And 71% say they hope that when they fall in love, their partner will have started out as a friend. Now, again, as I mentioned, if you're both single, you're both looking for that potential partner, this is a good way to start to be friends. In fact, my husband and I started that way, you know. And once you're married, you can make each other's best friend. Now, if you're married, I think it is very important to be much more careful, to treat much more carefully with opposite sex friendships. I personally think that if you're a married person, you shouldn't have an opposite sex friend you spend time with without your spouse. Now, my husband and I are on the same page on this one. And this should also apply when it comes to opposite sex friends you talk to on social media or on your phone. Even if you're not meeting in person, but you're constantly texting each other, calling each other, sending each other private messages on your social media, that's not a good thing. Your spouse should know who you're talking to and what you're talking about. I know some people will say things like, well, that's a little bit too possessive, isn't it? You know what? The best thing to do if you feel that way, if your spouse approaches you and start asking you like, hey, why are you always talking to that person? And you start to feel kind of annoyed, the best thing to do, the best approach is to try to put yourself in your spouse's shoes. How would you feel if your spouse is doing that to you? Now, if you're fine with that, that may work, but most of us would not be okay with that. And you just feel annoyed because you're the one doing it. But the moment you switch that table, you flip that table, you would feel exactly the same. Try it. Okay. And this is more dangerous, actually, this spending time alone, if you are going through some rough patches in your marriage. Now, it's very normal for people to seek emotional support from friends when they're going through something. And I think that's not a bad thing. If you're a man, you're going through something in your marriage, if you want to talk to a male friend and ask or seek for advice, that's a good thing. Now, if you're asking or you're seeking that advice from a female friend, that could be dangerous. Now, we all know that with women, relationships a lot of times starts with emotional attachment. Now, when you start, for example, you're going through that kind of situation in your marriage, and then you start talking to that male friend, confiding your worries and things that, things that's happening in your marriage to that, man, that's when it starts to, emotional attachment can get very dangerous. And on the other hand, men doing that to a female friend, you're alone, you're, sharing your burden and all that stuff, that female friend could give you a little tap on the shoulder or maybe a friendly hug. That very little physical, like interaction can turn into much more serious, much more physical than you intended to be. So that's why you don't really want to put yourself in that type of situation. Now, most people will probably say, wow, that's a pretty wild imagination you have. You know what? You don't need to imagine this because we know that this happens all the time. And there's a reason why we think this happens all the time. We see it, okay? You don't need to imagine it. It happens all the time. Now, I just have to mention this, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but if you're going through some difficulty in your marriage, I think it is best to seek advice as a couple. Find a marriage counselor, maybe even talk to your priest or to your pastor, someone you can trust. Now, if you want to do that like one on one, for example, if you're a man and you need that advice, talk to your pastor. Now, talk to a male friend. Now, if you need a female perspective, have that friend bring his wife. And I think it's also very important to seek advice from people who can actually give you valuable advice. Because I find that sometimes people ask advice from friends who have never been married before, no children, really no experience when it comes to relationships. And I'm not saying that that person will not be able to give any type of valuable insight. There might be some there, but it's very different when you're getting advice from someone who's been through it. You know what I mean? That's just my 2 cents on that. Okay, so to conclude this conversation, I think friendship is a good way to start, especially if you're both single and you're looking for that potential partner. Now, if you're married, I think my advice is to tread much more carefully when it comes to opposite sex friendships. And instead of establishing or looking for a new friend, why not just, establish the friendship you already have with your spouse? Make your spouse your best friend. And, sometimes we look for something else when this person right next to us who's already tried and tested is there. Establish that relationship you already have with your spouse. I think that's much more important. Now, I'm not saying you can't have any other friends. Of course, we need friends are important, but again, that friendship needs to be much more casual. And when I say casual, I'm talking, how you socialize with that friend. You can still have like a meaningful friendship with someone without really spending alone time with them. And if you want to hang out with friends, I think it's best to do that as a couple. Have your spouse get to know your friend as well, and vice versa. I think that could work. But having that very deep friendship with the opposite sex, and sometimes that friendship is much deeper than the kind of relationship you have with your spouse. For example, I've heard of people saying, oh, okay, I'm married, but I have this best friend who I can tell all my secrets. Now, if you're a woman and you say that, I don't know, I can't quite relate to that because I feel like the person that you should be able to share everything to is your husband, not any other man, and vice versa. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Okay, if you have a different perspective, you're more than welcome to share that in my comment section below. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.